Happy Memorial Day. How is everybody doing on today? Once again, this is Yolanda Gayden, your host with YCG Ministry, and we have come to drop the T on tonight. Yes. Our song of tonight. Yes. How many are you ready on tonight? We have come to have another amazing time on dropping the T on tonight. How many of you guys were here on last Monday? Somebody say, woo, it was fire. And we are expecting no less on tonight. I know some of you are full. You've ate the barbecue. Now it's time to sit down and grab your tea because dropping the tea is about to go down. Are you excited on tonight? Go ahead and drop in the comments that I am excited to be here on tonight. Say, I am excited. Woo! It's been a great day on today. I hope that you guys have had an amazing day. Some of us are off from work, our 9 to 5. And I hope you got some much needed rest on today. And that you are ready. You are ready, ready, ready. Go ahead and share and like the broadcast for me. Go ahead and like and share. Yes. We are on. Go ahead and start your watch party. Woo! It's about to go down. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for tonight's episode of Dropping the T on tonight? Go ahead and tag. Go ahead and share. Go ahead and like. Go ahead and get your girlfriend, inbox them. Come on, where are my kings at on tonight? Where are the men? Come on, come on. We are here on Dropping the T, and we are ready. How many of us surrender on tonight? All that we are. We surrender on tonight to God's will and to his way. Woo! Come on, come on, come on, come on. Woo! I love this part right here. How many of us strong when we are weak? Because it's not our strength, but it's the Father's strength. All right. Can y'all hear that on tonight? Let me know in the comments. Here we are. Yes. All right, all right. Uh-oh, somebody said they're unable to hear. Okay, you guys, can you hear me now? Somebody let me know in the comments. I don't know. Everything is on. I'm not sure why you would not be able to hear me, but we are going to have another Dropping the T episode on the night. Okay, okay. Thank you guys for giving me the feedback. I appreciate it. You couldn't hear the music. I am super sorry. I don't know what happened. Let me give you just a little bit more because we about to go down. Nothing's gonna stop tonight. We come to have an exciting night on Dropping the T, and we're gonna do just that. All right. So I'll give you a little bit more of it because this song right here. Can you hear the music now? Okay, you can hear me. Great. Can you hear the music? Thank you. Thank you for joining Dropping the T on tonight. I appreciate you guys for coming in. Go ahead and share and like. We have come to have a great time. Wow, I don't know what it is. They're saying they cannot hear the music, but that is okay. How are you guys doing on tonight? Go ahead and flood the comments. I want to know how is your day on today, and then let me know where you're tuning in from, and let me know that you guys are ready for tonight's episode of Dropping the T. The song was Gracefully Broken, and many of us already know that song. It is so powerful, and I feel like it is fitting because we have to broken sometimes gracefully in the Lord, and it is God that once sometimes he allows us to get to a place to be broken. It is him that puts us back together. I am so excited on tonight. I'm not going to let you guys wait any longer because as always we have an amazing guest, and we are so honored to have our guests on Dropping the T. All right. We got Miss Tracy from Arizona. We are so honored to have you. Thank you for joining, Ann. Thank you for joining, Tracy. We are so, Sister Tucker. We thank you guys, Minister Tucker. We thank all of you guys for coming in and for joining with us on tonight. We are so blessed to have you. And so at this time, ready? I want to hear it in the you guys know how we do it on Dropping the T. Let me see it in the comments. Are you ready for tonight's guest? Because we are about to get started. And the tea is about to go down. Hello. We are ready here on tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? How are you this evening?
I am wonderful. It's been an amazing day. All right. Miss Tracy said, let's go. That's what I'm talking about, Tracy.
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. Let's go. Let's go. We are about to get into this tea. I tell you, you look amazing. We love it. I love your whole look and your earrings, your hair. You're just beautiful on tonight.
Thank you. Look, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to, you know how we do it. We're not going to drop the tea all at once. You guys going to have to stay with us so you can sip with us because it's going to go down. You're going to want to be here when we get finished sipping this tea. So we're going to start by allowing my guest to just tell you guys her name, and she's going to tell you guys where she's originally from and where she is located right now. We are about to go down. Tag your friend. Go ahead, and it's on you.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Yolanda, for allowing me this space to be able to share tonight and to really share some tea. So my name is Casey Starr Long. As you can see on the screen, I am from St. Louis. I live in St. Louis with my husband, and we are involved in ministry. And I just want to just give you a shout out, Yolanda, for everything that you are doing with this ministry by providing a platform for people to share their stories and talk about the messy parts in life and how God can really use those messy parts in our lives. So I'm just going to jump right in and just share a little bit about my background, because this is all about dropping the T. My background is that I grew up for the majority part in a two-parent home. My mother and father were what you would call middle class, blue collar workers, and I have a younger brother. And my grandfather on my mother's side was involved in politics. And he actually made history as one of the first Black comptrollers in the city of St. Louis, which is where I am located. And he also got elected to the state Senate in Missouri. And so, being a young girl, I remember his reelection campaign. I remember going door to door, knocking on doors with my mom. I was real little, so I wasn't probably that much helpful, wasn't that very helpful. But I remember knocking on doors and passing out campaign literature for my grandfather. And as I got older, I just began to really be very intrigued and interested with how government works. I wanted to know how things could be improved in the city. And I was just very interested. And I would say at about the age of 13, I made the decision that one day I would run for mayor. I wanted to be mayor of the city of St. Louis, and that was my dream. And I just began to kind of chart out life. I thought that I would go to college and I would go to law school and then eventually run for office. My life did not unfold absolutely that way, but I just had a desire to run for office and to hold an elected position. And that actually ended up coming true. I graduated from college at Hampton University. I majored in political science. I didn't go to law school. I actually ended up working for a member of Congress from Missouri, right outside of college. And so I worked in Washington, D.C. for a little bit, and then later moved back home to work in the local district office in St. Louis. And from there, there was an opening for a local council seat in St. Louis called the St. Louis Board of Aldermen. And those seats, they didn't open up much, and so whenever there was an opening, that was an opportunity to run. The person that had that office at that time was considering running for a higher position. And so that's what created the opening. And so at the age of 26, I prayed and I made the decision that I would run for that local seat on the St. Louis Board of Aldermen. And I quit my job. I quit my job working for the member of Congress. I cashed out my 401k, which wasn't that much because I wasn't that far out of college, but I had a couple of $1,000s in that 401k. I cashed that out and I decided to run full time for elected office for the 6th Ward in St. Louis. And there were a lot of just God moves in that decision to run for political office. I was young, I was fresh. I think right now we see a lot of people who are young and getting involved in politics. And at that time in St. Louis, we weren't seeing it as much. So I was very much a fresh face. And so I just began to knock on doors and introduce myself to people and just worked really, really hard to become elected. It was a 3-way race. There were 2 other gentlemen that had also decided to vie for that elected seat. And they were older than me. They were white males. And at the end of the day, I ended up getting over 51% of the vote. So I made history actually in St. Louis as the youngest elected official in St. Louis history. And I got sworn into office at the age of 26, representing the 6th Ward, which was the ward, the neighborhood that I had grew up as a child. I went to school as a child, was very familiar with the community, had still lived in that same community. My household, my family house, I was in that community. And so, yeah, I got elected at a very young age. And like I said, made history and had the very best of intentions with that position to do the work that I really felt that God had called me to do. And Yolanda, I'm not sure exactly where you are, but I'm just gonna. Okay, yeah. So that's okay. You're on mute. Yolanda, you're on mute.
Yes, I
Okay.
tell you, it's still, look, we are here for it. Come on, let's go ahead and take a sip because I tell you, it is truly going down. So you said that you really believe, and it sounds like, I mean, that's amazing. 26 years old, going to office, you had to have faith. I mean, stepping out with barely nothing, because I know you said you did your 504, but you said it wasn't much there. So that is powerful that you had the faith to see and believe that you could obtain that. So at that particular time, so you had a faith walk with God. You were already saved. You had already given your life to the Lord. You was already walking in Him.
So
Drop the
I
T,
grew,
girl.
I grew up in church. My mom, I got saved as a young girl at the age of 7. I went to a private school, and the teacher on the first day in 2nd grade said, "If you ever want to have Jesus come into your heart, let me know, and I'll lead you in the prayer to be able to do that." So on the schoolyard, a group of friends came and said, "Hey, remember when Mrs. Dames said that we could get saved? We want to talk to her. Do you want to come with us?" And so I was like, "Sure." And so literally, our teacher, she took us inside. This is like during recess. She took us inside and she walked us through the prayer of salvation. So that was life changing. Can you imagine going to school where the teacher is like, "If you ever want to be saved, let me know and I'll walk you through the steps." So I confessed Jesus as my Lord and Savior at the age of 7. I got baptized a year later. My mother did not grow up in church, and she got been working on her heart, and so she started getting drawn to church. And so my mom raised us. We were kind of compelled to go to church. But I will say this: I went to church, but I did not have an encounter with God until really years later. So I was one of those people. I went to church every Sunday. I knew all of the songs. I knew when to clap. I knew how to do all of that, but I did not have that authentic, true relationship until much later.
Yes, that is a big difference. Most people don't really understand that, but there's a difference. We've all, since the pandemic, I think you really have had a clearer view of what it means to actually be in that building and have church service, and what it means to have a personal relationship with Christ, because I have seen many grow closer to the Lord. I know I have, with the pandemic and things that going on with us in America, it has drew and pushed me more towards God. But I have seen some people be pushed the opposite way. So it is very important. That's something to really identify and talk about, that you were introduced to God, and wow, amazing teacher from my point of view. But we already know during today's time, telling a child about Christ, is it could get pretty, into trickiness, with your job and stuff. A lot of people don't want us to talk on our jobs and things like that about Christ or God or Jesus or anything like that. But kudos to that teacher, whoever she was, that at that time led many of the children to Christ. That is just phenomenal. So you had enough though to believe that you had some faith. Maybe
Yeah.
you wasn't rooted and grounded, but you definitely had some faith to believe that you could obtain that. Because I know people who are strong in their faith, and I mean, they have talked about, wanting to do different things, achieve different things, but to actually take that initiative and to be so young, I mean, wow, I just commend the girl at 26. I was still trying to figure out life. So
Yeah, I really believe it was a calling. It was just part of my purpose, you know, and it just made sense. I remember I was working out with a personal trainer and I was contemplating running for office. And I remember telling him, I said, you know what? I'm in the middle of making a decision. And I know that if I make this decision, my life is going to change, whether I win the election or whether I don't. I just remember being at that spot, the crux where I was just like, I can potentially make a decision that is going to impact my life. And so I really felt that it was just an anointing. It was a call, and it was for me. And I have to shout out my mom and my dad, who was living at the time. They supported me. They were
wow.
not like, you're crazy. I moved in with my mom. I lived with her. So yeah, I cashed out my 401k, but I had a place to stay.
Wow.
And look, I remember like I didn't have the money, and you're campaigning, you need your hair done. My dad
Yes.
was giving me money to get my hair done, helping me buy clothes so I can look presentable at the debates and all of that. And so it was just the grace of God, and he was just supplying. Yolanda, we could go all night when I would tell you that I was really like a no one. I didn't have a
Wow.
political career beforehand, but God, he touched the heart of this business owner where she allowed my campaign space. She allowed my campaign to operate out of her business for free. People,
Wow.
they didn't necessarily want to support me publicly because of their political associations, but behind the scenes, they would support my campaign. They would help me. They would introduce me to the right people. I mean, God's hand was really upon this campaign. It was his doing that I got elected. He graced me with a great campaign manager, great volunteers. People just came to help. They sewed into the campaign. My family was all on board. It was just God. It was just God. And so that's just a reminder to anybody that's watching right now that maybe you find yourself in the crux of a situation where you have to make a decision. Do I do this or do I do that? And you can't see what's going to happen on the other side, but there's a call. That there's an anointing for you to take that step. Go ahead and do it. God is going to be there with you. He's not going to leave you.
That right there is a huge blessing and lesson in itself, because a lot of times I've even, you know, known for myself, I am one that pushes and encourage people to take that leap of, faith, to jump if it's God. But I've been trying to figure out sometimes in our own lives, when we're faced with those different things, that we're like, you feel this calling, you hear this, that God is pulling and tugging on your heart, and and the direction that he's taking you, but yet actually jumping, oh, yeah, girl, let's sip some tea.
You're right.
But to
You're absolutely
actually
right.
jump, it's like, I don't know, we're numb sometimes with fear, and sometimes even just, the what ifs, what if it doesn't succeed? What if it doesn't flow or go the way that's why I said I really commend you. That is just amazing to have been at that point, and then at that age, 26, to take on something that big, and it just really sound like you had a somewhat of a plan, that enough, you didn't have like a lot of money, but just to take that leap of faith, that's just amazing. So when you took that leap of faith, and like you go and you say, there's a certain standard that you have to withhold, because of course, I can only imagine that all eyes were on you, probably the more so because of your age. And to have to keep up hair and nails and, all the nice things that, we ladies like to keep up, especially if you're running for something that, big, in office, mayor. So kind of, slide us into a little bit, what happened? Where did the shift come from that got you to the place where we're here now to tell your story?
Right. So here's the thing. I had studied politics, and so I knew other elected officials. I watched them. So before I even made the decision to run for office, I knew I would run one day. And so until then, I would watch other politicians. And so I was working for other politicians. So I would hear gossip about others that were in elected office, and I would hear gossip about other elected officials basically embezzling campaign funds. So when you become an elected official, you also have a campaign fund that you solicit donors and people to support your campaign so you can buy campaign signs, so you can buy literature. You can also pay campaign related expenses out of that fund. And for a good, viable candidate, you always want to have a lot of money in that campaign account because often it might make your opponent think twice against about running against you. So I always wanted to have at least $50,000 in my campaign account because I knew that some people would think that I was susceptible to run against because I was young, and I always figured that I would have opponents during my reelection. So it was always about pumping up my campaign account. And so when I got elected, I said, you know what? I know what other politicians may do, some of them. I know that they may use that campaign account to buy things for themselves, to use that money to buy clothes and all of that. I am not going to do that. That was just like a vow that I made. I remember talking about it with my mom. Like, yeah, I hear other people may do this and do that, but I'm just going to be I'm going to be integral. I am not going to do this, And so that was like a vow that I made to myself. And it was actually really kind of prideful. Like, yeah, they do that, but I'm not going to do that. And it becomes tempting because on the board of aldermen, it really was a full-time job, but the salary was part-time. And you're right. There was this pressure to look a certain way. But the problem was, had I known my identity in Jesus Christ, I would not have gotten tempted by the devil. I remember I was featured in this news magazine, and they were talking about Casey is like this fashionista. She's a politician, the best dressed politician. And it wasn't that I was just so glamorous with my clothes. It was just that I was younger. So, some of the older, my colleagues, they wore the dark colored suits, and I might have a little pop of color. It wasn't that I was just so great with clothes. So I started getting this attention about, well, what is she wearing? I was featured in Oprah magazine, Ebony magazine, on the cover of some of the local newspapers. I traveled internationally with my position. And so I started to feed into the hype. Well, people want to know what I'm wearing. So I need to make sure I got a new dress on, or I got to make sure my hair is together. And this little salary is not cutting it. So let me dip into my campaign account. It's so funny because Satan is so cunning and sneaky, and he'll wait for you. I remember there were times in the beginning where I was tempted and I would be like, no, I'm not doing that. I've made a vow that I'm not going to do it. But I remember it started off with like a cup of hot chocolate. I didn't need this cup of hot chocolate. My bank account, my personal bank account was empty. I was going to get paid in the next couple of days. But that flesh was like, I want this hot chocolate. So let me just use my campaign account and I'll just get this hot chocolate. And when I get paid, I'll reimburse the campaign for the hot chocolate. Well, it started with the hot chocolate, then it went to shoes, then it went to a dress. Back then, y'all, I didn't have locks. I had a long weave, and I needed the best quality type of weave.
Okay.
And so I was spending a lot of money. And so then I started buying the weaves. Then I started getting, my nails done. And really, Yolanda, it was greed. It was greed. I could have got another job. I could have cut out other expenses, but
Right.
I wanted to travel. I wanted to look cute, and I wanted to look the certain type of look. But here's the thing. I didn't know who I was in Jesus Christ. I didn't understand that it was God that had opened up the door. He knew just how I was. He accepted me just as how I was. And if I had had the confidence in myself and in God, then I wouldn't have been trying to put on a mask to look a certain way to appeal to people.
Okay.
And that's it. And it's the same thing how people go into drugs, how people go into
Yes.
promiscuity. It's like you don't know who you are. So that's the T, is that, and here's the thing too, because I think a lot of people saw me. They saw me on the news. They saw me in the newspapers, and baby, I was on social media. Look, I'm going to give the best representation of my life.
Okay.
But I I wasn't showing the parts about me having low self-esteem. I wasn't showing the parts about me suffering with anxiety. Like, okay, God and gave me this position. I'm young. I got to do a good job. I'm stressed out. So I'm drinking a bottle of wine every night,
Wow.
worried. Am I good enough? Can I really do this job? I didn't know who I was in God. I wasn't anchored in God. And so the enemy is like, you need to make sure your hair is on point. You need to make sure you look the part, all of that kind of mess, and I just got tempted and greed. And so I ended up going through that campaign account. I ended up at the end of the day, I want to say I ended up spending over the course of a couple of years, I ended up spending like $30,000. I ended up basically stealing. That's what it is. I
Right. Right.
stole from that campaign account to support a personal lifestyle. And I got convicted. It took a while because in the beginning I was like, well, this is my secret. No one knows. What you do as a politician is you self-report every quarter. So I was lying, and I was self-reporting that, oh yeah, I got $50,000 in the bank account, but really it's only 20,000 because I have been using this. So I lied. And one day, God was over the years, God was just beginning to deal with my heart. He was really calling me into ministry. And I remember I did a fast, and it was like this fast, and God was just like, at the end of the day, at the end of this 30-day fast, I just really felt like my life changed. And one day I was doing laundry in the basement, and I had a vision. And this vision was that it was like in the future, and one day I would need to testify before a panel. And the vision was that my past was going to come forward. And God was like this: basically, you need to admit what you have done, that you've been stealing this money. And if you don't admit it, it's going to come out in the future. So I'm going to give you grace right now to admit it. And I was like, God, if I admit that I've been stealing this money, I can lose my job. I will be so embarrassed, and I can go to prison. Because at that time, other politicians were having to go to prison with dealing with campaign improprieties. I was like, God, I can go to prison. And it was just like, I was like, you know what, God, I'm ready to be free. I am ready to be free. Look, sin will make you sick. And it
Okay.
had gotten to the point that it wasn't fun anymore. I had stopped taking the money, but I mean, I still had this deficit in my campaign account. I had already committed and said, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore, but I still had this deficit in my campaign account that no one knew about. And so, when you're running for reelection, you still have to buy yard signs. And so on paper, it's showing that I had this amount of money, but I didn't. My campaign manager didn't know. So I'm trying to put money in the account to make sure things don't bounce. And it was so stressful. And so finally, I just said, you know what, God, I'm going to trust you that, if I go to prison, once I let people know, once I admit what I have done, if I go to prison, then I'm going to just go to prison. But I believe, God, that you're going to work it out. And Yolanda, it was so much peace. You know what I'm saying? It was like I was hoping and praying that I wouldn't have to go to prison, but it was like if I do, then I know God has me. And I just felt peace in my basement. And so, long story short, I knew I had to admit what I had done. Previously, I had worked with an attorney who worked for a major law firm, and God gave me this strategy. Instead of going directly to the Missouri Ethics Commission to say, hey, you know, I stole this money, God gave me a strategy to talk to an attorney first. And so I shared with this attorney that I used to work with. And, you know, I basically admitted what I had done. And, you know, long story short, God gave him the strategy to work a deal out with the city prosecutor that I would not have to go to prison. And so I ended up having to pay restitution, and I had to pay a fine. I ended up having to pay about $32,000 back. And so I didn't have to go to prison. But here's the thing, even though I didn't have to go to prison, I still had to deal with the consequences. I still was on the front page of the paper. I was very much embarrassed. I lost my job. My family was embarrassed. You know, the things that I had tried to build as a politician, I felt like a lot of that had crumbled down. I disappointed so many people. And so I'm not, you know, I'm here to give God glory that his grace and his mercy is so good. I didn't have to go to prison, but I did have to deal with consequences. And that's the thing about sin, is that, you know, God, he does forgive us, but there are still some consequences that we still have to go through. And so, you know, I think even to this day, there are still some of the consequences that I still have to deal with. I became an entrepreneur because it seemed as if it was very difficult for people to want to hire me. You know, people would say, yeah, I'll help you try to get a job. And at the end of the day, no, we can't hire you, because it had been so public. And so, you know, those were just, you know, some of the consequences that I had to deal with. So yeah.
I tell that that is it's so much into your story. I was just listening. It's so much. Even going back to, you know, I think a lot of times people are guilty with even wanting to keep up an image, like even on social media. You can bring it home to today. Even on social media, people are so wanting to have a certain image that they will go to all kinds of dramatic, you know, steps in order to have this image, you know. And like you saying, we don't know what's behind the door. We don't know what's, you know, what's going on, you know, that we cannot see, but they'll come and they'll present an image to social media, and you know, beautiful beat face and beautiful weave hair, but we may not know that, you know, their car got repossessed last week. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it's just so much that I saw in your story. I saw it from that perspective, as well as, you know, the enemy, when you said about, you know, just that little thing, you know, something as simple as hot chocolate. Like it seems like something so little, but that's how the enemy, you know, Bible tells us that the enemy will sift us as wheat. And you know, it's the same way. That little bitty thing, that little something, he got you to, you know, just to, you know, confined to doing that one thing, that one time, that was so small. But that's how he does. When he gets us to take that first little bite, then he just continue to just draw us in, you know. And I'm just amazed at the fact that, like you said, even though God had grace, because we all know that people embezzle money or steal money, you know, many of them have did prison time. And although, like you're saying, there's definitely been consequences in your life, you know, but just to see how God has just, you know, bought you out of so much. And you know, it's just a story that you can get so many different revelations out of, because you know, sometimes, like you said, you know, God was calling you to this office to be mayor, and he was lining things up, and that's how it is in our own personal lives. There are things that God is lining up for us, but then there are things that we can go and do that can hinder what God is trying to set in place to bless us, and it's just amazing. It's not many people. I don't really know any that can say they embezzled money and did not even go to prison. That is a miracle all in itself. And yes, and then, I am sure when you were doing it, the enemy probably never at first, I know later on, but he probably not never even allowed you to see that it was actually stealing. I could just see the enemy, like how he does. He present things pretty. Well, it's not, you're just borrowing and you're just gonna get a little bit and do this here, and then you replace it back later, and so you're just borrowing it, and he just really, the enemy, we have to be very careful because he will really set us up for destruction with, the small things. It'll start off being small, but then he'll just bait us in. And it's just a amazing story. Everybody, are you enjoying her testimony on today? I mean, it just shows so many different perspectives of the grace of God. And it also lets us know, we have to be careful for all things. Sometimes we say, that little hidden thing, like you said, nobody see me, nobody know. But, that's how the enemy will have us to be when it's concerning sin and wrong. Sometimes, you'll be in a place of where nobody really see me, nobody really know, but God knows. And if
God.
we're not careful, he will expose us, and he gives us that time. See, that was your grace period, which I'm telling you, girl, I don't know what I would have done in that situation, because I mean, I've always said, even when I was in the world and in a complete sinner and doing so many things, even stole, girl. Yeah, I just started in the candy store and, had children, be the lookout person, and stole many bags of candy, just stuff, because, my grandmother, didn't have money, and and so even, with the simplest thing, we'll sit and we'll look, and we'll buy into, doing things that is wrong. But I don't even know if I could have got to that place and be like, okay, God, even if this caused me to go to jail, I don't know. But I do know that, when I do something, even if it's wrong, I say, God, I own it. And because the thing about it, God already knows that we're wrong. And sometimes, depending on what it is, if you don't confess or own up to it, he'll let it be revealed.
Yeah. And I really felt like it could have been my situation could have been so much worse. One is I could have been sentenced to prison because there were other politicians who embezzled less money. Like there was one politician, he was on camera taking $1,000 bribe, and he had to do time in jail. There was another politician who lied on a campaign finance report, and he ended up having to do like a year in federal prison. So it was really an example of God's grace. I really believe in that, basement where God was like, look, you need to admit, and you need to admit now. And my testimony is that even in my admitting my wrongdoing, God was with me every step of the way. Even when I went public and it was on the news, I had the support of my mother. By then, my father had passed. And even though I know my mother was probably embarrassed, I was on the front page of the paper. I was in the news. Reporters were calling me, trying to get quotes and all of that. My mother said, and this is mama, she said, I could get that broom and hit you across the back. This is just how we relate with each other. She said, but I love you and I'm proud of you for admitting what you have done. So that was her way of saying, I'm disappointed, but you're still my daughter and I love you. And she was an example of God's grace and mercy, that God can still be disappointed with us, but he still loves us. That attorney that I mentioned who worked for a big prestigious law firm downtown, It was God's grace that connected me to him years ago, that I was able to reach out to him and say, hey, I'm in this situation. I'm expecting to pay $200 an hour for his services. Wasn't really sure how I was going to be able to pay. My mom said, why don't you ask him if he has any pro bono, if he could take your case pro bono? And we kind of laughed at it because pro bono cases are usually for refugees, immigrants, people who are not guilty, right, but need legal representation. I asked the attorney, I said, hey, attorney, do you have, can your law firm do this pro bono for me? And he said, no, we can't. And I said, okay. And do you know, like within a couple of weeks, he came back and he said, hey, our law firm is low on their pro bono hours, and we are going to take your case pro bono. So y'all, even though I was guilty, even though I embezzled the funds, even though I was wrong with mishandling money, God was still looking out for me and gave me an attorney for free who was respected. The law firm was respected, and they represented me well to be able to work a deal with the St. Louis prosecutor at that time. So I would just have to pay restitution and not go to prison. And here's Yolanda, here's the deal. Because when God forgives you and when he extends grace and mercy, your enemies and haters, they get upset. Because, being in politics, there were people, they were rubbing their hands, some of them, not all of them, some, like, oh yeah, okay, she gonna get what she deserved. She thought she was all that, whatever. You could just imagine that's what enemies do. And so when it was announced that I was not going to have to go to prison, that instead I was going to have to pay back the money that I had taken, some of my detractors were so upset. They called the prosecutor's office and said, well, why isn't she going to have to go to prison? She should go to prison. Why are you extending her mercy? She should have to pay restitution and go to prison. I was floored. The prosecuting attorney told my attorney at the time and said, yeah, we've been getting pressure that we should, sentence her to prison because so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so has been sentenced. And so I started praying. I was like, God, don't let them go back on what they agreed upon. And they did not. The news did a feature story, and the title of it, Yolanda, was, if you did this, you would go to prison, but these people are not. And I was one of the people. They did like a story, a segment of different things taking place in the city, and I was one of the people. And the title was that if you did this, you would go to prison, but these people aren't. And so it was like the enemy's plan to kind of rally up people to get them upset and to put pressure on the authorities at the time to sentence me to prison. But it did not work. It was the grace of God. It was the grace of God.
Yes.
So, I was wrong, and I admitted, I confessed. I wrote a letter to the editor at the Post-Dispatch admitting that I was wrong. I wrote a letter to my constituents apologizing for greed, because that's what it was. The devil didn't make me do it and all that kind of stuff. He was behind it, whatever. But it was ultimately my choice. I knew better. And so I repented. I apologized to God, and I was sorry. And I want to say this too, and then I'm going to be quiet. A lot of times we don't think about what generational sins. And if I look back over my family history, I love my family, but I heard things growing up. I saw things growing up where so-and-so would stuff bags at the store, or so-and-so would, switch tags, at the store so you could pay a lower price. And, you just hear these things and that kind of thing goes on in the family. But I do believe that, those types of sins, they get worse with each new generation. So what might start off as kind of innocuous, switching a little price tag here, or, swiping some candy, or stealing this or stealing that. I think that, that becomes a sin. It becomes a generational sin. And the next generation, it gets worse and worse and worse. And so, I look back and I hear about some of the things of some of the people in my bloodline who've done some of these things. And I think about that, here I come, that same familiar spirit. And I'm tempted, to steal, thousands and thousands of dollars. And so I hope I'm being clear here. What I'm trying to say is this: don't open the door to sin in your life, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, lying, stealing. Don't open up that door, close it, because you don't want your kids and your grandkids to also have to fight those familiar spirits and be tempted. Let the enemy know that it stops with me. It stops with me. And so my story is that, yeah, I got caught up over 13 years ago, but I learned my lesson. And the word of God says that we overcome by the Lamb of God and the words of our testimony. So I'm sharing my testimony so people in my family can hear, my grandchild can hear, other family members can hear, and my social media family can hear, that we don't have to allow the enemy to come in, that God's grace and mercy is there, but let's always do the right thing so we don't have to rely on his grace and mercy, in those types of situations. So that's my tea. That's my tea.
And what tea it has been, girl. Let's take a sip, because I tell you, everybody, did you enjoy her on tonight, telling her own personal truth? Come on, everybody. Let's continue to show her some love, and we're just so glad again that we have had you here on tonight. You have given out so many nuggets, and that is truly something that we want to take from this show on tonight. We don't want to we don't want to just continue to do things and then look for God's grace. We want to do things right according to his word and his way, so that we don't just have to do things and be like, oh, I messed up, and but we just want to say on tonight that if you are faced too with a situation where you have done wrong, this is a time to get it right now. Go ahead and forgive yourself. Go ahead and repent to God. And if there's people involved, go ahead and reconcile that situation. And if you need the grace of God to show up over your life, we are believing, we are touching and agreeing with you that God will give you grace and mercy in your situation, so that you can be reconciled back to the Father and be made whole, because that is the ultimate goal. We want to be reconciled with God, and we want to be made whole. I hope that you have kept all of your clippings and different things, because truly it is a powerful testimony, and it's going to go out for a while. God is going to continue to allow you to tell that testimony, because it's going to help set some people free, from a lot of things. People that are, in sin and know that they shouldn't be doing certain things, and they're going to get it right. I just believe your testimony going to cause people to want to be made whole and to want to be in the right standard and place with God. But truly, it has been a wonderful testimony of his grace and mercy. Mm-hmm. And before we go and leave this show on tonight, I want to allow you to give space. I want to give you space and allow you to tell the people how they can continue to stay connected with you. Go ahead and tell them where you are today in God, and the business that you're running, and everything that you're doing, and everything that you got on your plate right now. Go ahead and share with everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Yolanda, for allowing me to share and to drop this tea tonight. I have really enjoyed sharing my testimony, and thank you guys so much for your support in the comments. I've been seeing them, and it really has encouraged me. So since my scandal, I call it the scandal, but since the scandal, I got married. Coincidentally, I actually met my husband through the process of the scandal. By me being in the news, he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I'm praying for you." And from there, we had our first date and we got married. So God can really use your mess to bring you to your destiny. Real talk. That's really our story. My husband and I, we have a nonprofit ministry called Jacob's Ladder. where we work with individuals that are incarcerated or have been incarcerated. We go into the prisons, we preach the gospel, we walk alongside with men and women who have come out of prison to let them know that God is a God of second chances. He's a God of hope and restoration. If you want to connect, you can find me on Facebook under my full name, Casey Star Long. I'm also on Instagram. It's Casey Star Long, my full name with the number 7. And also, please go to my YouTube page under Casey Star Long, where I share testimonies and I share stories and I just point the way up to Jesus Christ on YouTube. I'm also an author, and I've published 4 or 5 books. They're all about Jesus Christ. Okay, that's my latest book, Fear Exposed, where I talk about overcoming fear. You can get that on Amazon. Just type my name in the search bar of Amazon and you'll see all of my books. So that's a way how you guys can get connected with me.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. We are just so honored again to have had you to come and bless us with your story. You guys, I want to thank you for coming again and being with us on YCG Ministry. We have totally dropped the T. I pray that you have been inspired and encouraged on tonight. Go ahead and continue to like and share and comment. And also for our replayers, we are so glad that you will be coming. And we ask that you like and share as well. Girl, this has been a wonderful night. We have thoroughly enjoyed it. We're going to sip our tea because we have what? Dropped the tea. I like to say to everyone, continue to have an amazing Memorial Day. Don't eat too much and join us again next Monday at 7 o'clock, Facebook Live and YouTube for Dropping the T, where we will tell personal testimonies of individuals who have overcame many things and obstacles in their lives. We are so honored to have had you here on tonight. Please, please join us next time for Dropping the T. And until then, we say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.